It's great to be here, and I had clear instructions of what I needed to do today, and that's to tell us all what my reasons are for hope and why it is that we can, in fact, win. Now, first, it's all about winning the arguments. And there is a sheer, compelling and powerful logic to the arguments against HS2. HS2 will be scrapped, not because it ruins the Chilterns, which it would, as we've heard from Shirley, but because it will be a horrendous waste of money. And because the claims about the benefits that HS2 would bring, made by the government, are simply unsustainable. And remember, those claims have to be sustained for a very long time for HS2 to actually be built. And can I remind you of some of those claims? HS2 is good value for money, they tell us. £2 of benefit for every £1 spent. First, the £1 spent means £1 of subsidy, of your money, of my money. And even on the government's own numbers, HS2 is completely commercially unviable. Not bad for a country in dire economic straits. Second, the benefits themselves are an illusion. They're based on DfT figures who haven't even spotted that people don't work on trains, and indeed they rigged the numbers by using 10-year-old data. That single factor accounts for 40% of HS2's benefits. Take it away and the economic case collapses. Second, they say that HS2 is part of the low carbon economy. Now, even the government's claim that it's roughly carbon neutral requires fixing the numbers. Everyone knows that faster trains create more emissions than slower ones, but the real killer is the government chose to ignore the fact that any domestic air slots that would be freed up would be used by more emitting long-haul flights. And who says this? Us? Well, only because British Airways say it. So no wonder the Green Party and other key environmental groups recognise the sheer nonsense of the government's claim. Thirdly, HS2 is the only way to meet future capacity. That's what governments say. Well, I suppose they're right if they choose to ignore all the much better alternatives, especially increasing capacity on the existing network. But we can more than satisfy the demand that DfT project over the next 35 years with low cost, better value for money, flexible increases in capacity on the existing lines, which even involve less disruption than HS2 would create. So why would any sane person ignore these options? 51M have actually shown how it could be done properly. We have developed an alternative rail manifesto for what can be delivered. Even the half-hearted attempts of the government's own consultants managed a better solution than HS2, called Rail Package 2. But of course, all these are much less glamorous solutions. And it's a measure of how desperate government have become to discredit the alternatives that they have to pretend the extra rolling stock you need to lengthen the trains and to run a few extra services are going to cost more than the entire fleet of HS2. They also refuse to meet us, to discuss the alternatives, or to have them independently validated. Now, we made these points last summer, but the government still has no proper answers. It has no answers because the evidence to support their claims simply doesn't stack up. And just one more on their claims. They say HS2 can operate with 18 trains an hour. 36, because they've got to go both ways. In fact, HS2 may not even be technically achievable. But rather than admit to any uncertainty, government actually claimed in the consultation documents that they would be using already proven European technology. Never mind Europe, no one in the world achieves 18. Even the Japanese only have 12. So HS2 is built on shifting sands of what might be possible. And if it isn't, then we have an even bigger white elephant that might manage to get to Birmingham, but not have sufficient space to pack in the trains it needs to get to Leeds. I could go on the claims, but we've spent a year now demolishing their claims, and yet we still have HS2. So, my second reason for hope is winning the politics. Sadly, we have seen that winning the argument is not enough. We have to win the politics too. There is a political world, an odd world, in which economic sense seems subservient to political sense, where party loyalty outranks being right, and party politics seems to trump national interest. The party conference season is now over. When the arguments for HS2 are blatantly broken, how can there be three-party consensus on proceeding with HS2? So does that mean HS2 will be built? Absolutely not. The Tories, well, Philip Hammond had been too arrogant and would have been too arrogant to admit he was wrong. He preferred to squander 30 billion on taxpayers' money than have government make another U-turn. And Labour, with the Tories tearing themselves apart with deeply unpopular planning changes and HS2, why would Labour give the Tories an easy way out and withdraw their support? After all, this is politics. The Labour Party passed the poison chalice of HS2 to the coalition, and now they want them to drink from it. And the Lib Dems? Well, it was, according to them, their idea in the first place. Not a good idea, but their idea. So where is my hope in all this? Well, the political world is attached to our world. And in our world, more and more people of intelligence and influence are looking at the facts for themselves and deciding that HS2 makes no sense. As well as the powerful coalition of 18 local authorities that have come together to fight HS2, 51M, and the mainly environmental groups under the Right Lines Charter, there is an increasingly impressive roll call of organisations and people of influence. The Economist, the Institute of Economic Affairs, the Conservative Transport Group, the Sustainable Development Commission before they were abolished, the Taxpayers Alliance, the New Economics Foundation, editorials in the Financial Times, the Sunday Telegraph, and just last week, calls from the editors of The Independent and the City AM paper. Even some prominent HS2 supporters have come out as not being able to swallow the government's rhetoric. Andrew Tirry, Archie Norman, and Lord Digby Jones of Birmingham, a signatory of the original businessman's support for HS2 letter last February, claimed at our fringe meeting at the conference that all HS2 would do for Birmingham is make it a dormitory town to London. So bit by bit, a non-party political consensus of journalists and editors, of economic and environmental pressure groups is developing. A year ago, there was a presumption that if government thought it worth spending billions, then probably they would spend it. There was hardly a dissenting voice except for the action groups. But as more people have looked at the facts for themselves, the informed opinion, which is what matters for politics, has become that HS2 is a waste of money. These are not good times for heritage projects. people's standards of living are actually reducing, and wasting money is not going to be a vote winner. So thirdly, and my last reason for hope, is Justine Greening, our new Secretary of State. Philip Hammond has gone, and we have Justine. So, what should we expect from her? She's an economist, from a seat that knows all about campaigning against big projects, and she supported her constituents in the fight against the third runway at Heathrow. She's young, she's ambitious, and I'm quite sure, however, she's taken her job with clear instructions as to what she must achieve. But she also represents one of those wonderful moments that perhaps only politics knows, of overnight creating an opportunity, a hook the party needs if they decide to change their policy without having to look for a contrived reason. Could we have ever seen Philip Hammond, through gritted teeth, saying he would think again? I think not. Philip Hammond had dug in on the issue. And while Justine Greening has taken over the hole he has dug, she is better placed to stop digging and climb out. Indeed, the consultation provides the very ladder with which to do so, and with some grace. The government, between reaffirming their commitment to HS2, has repeatedly said that they have not made up their mind. HS2 will never be easier to abandon than it is now. The government could even make a virtue of listening, blaming the DfT for its sloppy and out-of-date assessment methodology. And while they are unlikely to take this route and keep digging, I fear, for a while, the opposition is not going to go away. Bit by bit, we must help more and more people realise that HS2 should be stopped. HS2 is becoming political bad news, and it can only get worse. So I have some advice for Justine. Look at the facts and not the pro-HS2 propaganda. Look at the alternatives and not the nonsense that's said about them. Look at what is really in the national interest, not the unsupported assertions about growth and regional rebalancing. Look at the harm it will do to the countryside and the climate. And finally, when you've looked at the facts, do what they tell you is right. Scrap HS2.